The agenda this week considered the unemployment challenges of homeless youth, delved into cosmology with Lawrence Krauss, heard about a remarkable school in Israel for Arabs and Jews together, and got a reality check on the value of a university degree. The agenda's Week in Review begins with efforts to find a cure for food allergies. Let's look ahead. Sick Kids Hospital's got a campaign called In Only 10 Years. What is it you hope to achieve in only 10 years?
So it's a lofty goal, but we want to talk about having a cure. We want to talk about having
a cure
for
allergies.
For allergies in 10 years. Now this will be multi-pronged. Because I think it's everything from what can we modify early on to just stop it from happening at all. And I think with the new prevention guidelines, we published some in Canada in 2013, and now with the new LEAP study, we understand a lot more than we did when I was training about when we should be introducing foods into children's diets. So I think we start with prevention. And then if we still end up with children who have some allergies, some of the research that we're doing at Sick Kids is now focusing on other things that might be useful for those kids moving forward. So I talked a little bit about a molecule. So there's a couple of our researchers are working in adults and in children on a molecule that might be a marker of anaphylaxis. So this molecule, if it contributes to anaphylaxis, what if you could block it? What if someone could take a pill and block this particular biologic marker, such that if the child was accidentally exposed, nothing would happen or something mild would happen. So, for example, looking at introducing things like baked milk and egg, for example. So some of our researchers have done studies looking at introduction of baked foods. So if you actually heat a food enough, you can actually change the shape of the protein, and the immune system recognizes it in a different way. So we have kids who are allergic to milk and egg who can actually tolerate baked milk and egg, which opens up all kinds of foods in the home. The other kids can have those foods, and we're finding those kids are outgrowing their allergies more quickly. So these are all things moving in the right direction. One thing that happened through simple observation, and now one of our scientists is collaborating with the gastrointestinal service at our hospital, was that kids who've undergone liver transplant, there was a group of them that were developing new food allergies that they didn't have before their liver transplant. So now people are looking at what is it about their immune system when we do this liver transplant, and then we give them certain medications because of the liver transplant that is actually modifying their immune system. So all these things help us understand why certain cells develop in a certain way and cause or don't cause allergic manifestations later on. So there's all kinds of exciting research going on that will, I think, help us get to that goal. We've just recently recruited a new scientist from Austria who's going to be doing some really interesting work helping us with even better clinical tools that are now currently still in the research side of things that we can use clinically eventually to make decisions about who to do food challenges on, who's it safe to do, because our skin testing and our current blood test, they're okay, but they're not perfect. So exciting things going on there too. So I think there's lots of room for us to reach this goal. It's lofty, but you have to have a goal, and that's a good one, I think, to have.
And is it just you at Sick Kids, or are you in collaboration with other hospitals, or how are you doing
Absolutely.
this?
So there's a desensitization study that our group is working on right now to milk, and we're collaborating with Vancouver and McGill on that. So absolutely, very open to collaboration. We're collaborating within the hospital with other people that aren't in our specialty specifically, like the gastroenterologists, for example, and then with other hospitals across Canada and around the world.
The cure that you're looking for, you mentioned you might be able to take a tablet at some point. Is a vaccine part of the solution here as well?
So people have looked at vaccines, for example, to desensitize. So a number of years ago, some people in the US were doing some trials looking at vaccines to potentially desensitize folks to peanut, and they didn't go as well. Some kids it made a difference, some it didn't. That's not something we're working on right now, but down the road, who knows? There might be a way to change what was in the vaccine to allow it to be able to act on the immune system in a different way. So that is something I think down the road that might be a possibility, in conjunction with all of these other trials as well.
Just so I understand the goal better, though, is the point here you can't get rid of allergies, but you may be able to treat allergies, or the goal here is we're going to make allergies disappear? Which is it?
So I think the goal is we would like to cure allergies. I think because of genetics, there's always going to be the predisposition. in some families, and we can't change the genetics. So really, what we can affect is probably from birth on. So I think it's going to be prevention, and try to get to the point where our population, we start to see the numbers just plummet. If we do our job properly, they should just plummet. For anybody who squeaks through because of things that we couldn't have understood or don't understand yet, or until we get to the cure, have a really defined way to manage them, and to have very specific, engineered plans for them that aren't just the big blind everybody has to avoid, but have another sort of a more tailor-made approach to each patient. So I think at the end of the day, we can't change the genetics yet, but I would hope that we would be able to completely prevent if possible, and then if a kid does develop, cure it perhaps with some sort of a pill. Who knows? Who knows what it might look like in a few years? Because when you look at where we've come from in the last decade, it's unbelievable. It's a really exciting time to be in our field. And I couldn't have imagined this when we were training. Everything was quite stable for a long time. We were doing our work. It was good work, et cetera. And then people have just done some studies that have completely transformed the way we manage patients in the last 10 years. I could not have imagined it. It's a really exciting time.
Why is it so much more difficult for a young person who doesn't have somewhere to live to get a job than a young person who does?
Well, this is an obvious answer, but housing, I think it's very difficult to get up and go to work every morning and pack your lunch and take transit to work when you don't have stable housing, you don't have the supports around you. So that's one issue. The other, I think, is stigma. So the media-generated portrayal, unfortunately, often of homeless youth is, again, like I mentioned, the sort of bad kid stereotype, and that's not the case. So I think youth are concerned about disclosing their status as sort of a homeless person, or if they've experienced homelessness in the past, and that can be really difficult to fight that stigma.
Let's get some more wisdom around the table here from the experiences. Paul, Higher Up is what?
Higher Up is the world's first job portal to connect youth who've experienced homelessness with employment.
What partners have you brought on board so far?
Well, Higher Up was developed, it was launched in November of 2015 with our company Impact, with the support of the Home Depot Canada Foundation and Workopolis. And since then, we have created a national social enterprise focused on youth employment. We have 22 youth-serving organizations who are partners across the country, including 360 Kids here in Toronto. We have, I think, 7 or 8 now national employers, including Home Depot, Nordstrom, TD, Scotiabank, Walmart, and others. So,
and these are people who hire homeless kids?
Well, it's just started. So all those companies I mentioned have now posted jobs on Higher Up. And so our objective for the current year, for 2016, its first year, is to have 180 jobs created across Canada for youth who've experienced homelessness.
You think you're going to get there?
I certainly do. We're just at the beginning now, but it's already started. The leadership that these companies have shown is extraordinary. Of course, they all hire many people every year. But I think the remarkable thing here is this is social change through hiring. So any people that they can hire who've had this experience, of course, is transformational for those individuals and helps at a social level in a much broader way as well.
Michael, you joined this, yes?
Absolutely.
What appealed to you about it?
Well, for our kids, just walking into an employer, that might not work out so well. So they need a little bit of an edge. And with Higher Up, that's what they get. Employers coming into it absolutely know what they're coming into. They're looking to help our kids, employ our kids, and our kids know going in that that stigma won't be attached to them. Employers are going to accept them for who they are, and they'll have a shot at getting a job.
Do you teach skills to the homeless kids on how to get work and how to keep jobs and that kind of thing?
Yeah, well, along with all the agencies that Paul is talking about, we do teach them. It's like each of the individual kids comes with their own agent, right? So we teach them conflict management, we teach them time management. And if an employer has an issue, they could come back to us and say, can you help me out and work with this youth to work through it, instead of what normally could happen where they're let go.
Although, I got to tell you, from the sounds of what your life was like, living for week after week after week after week on $33 a week, you know how to budget, don't you?
Yeah, I do.
You do. So that's one skill you probably didn't need to teach her. I'm guessing.
Well, I know for a lot of kids, I mean, they're just not used to having the $33 if they don't have it. So when they do come into money, and you can't blame them, they want to go out and celebrate and do things that normal people do, right? So we do have to help them because they do have to pay rent. And when you're in a shelter, you're not paying rent. So if you want to get housing, you have to pay rent, you have to budget for food, and you have to think of the different costs. So we're teaching them those life skills.
Why did you get involved in this?
I'd like to comment on something that Jesse and Michael said. The stigma is, and I see it, but this young lady is the norm. Really is the norm.
In what respect?
Intelligent, well-spoken. Not homeless because of choice. And by working with Covenant House and their Cooking for Life program,
right.
I've had 2 young people in our restaurant, and the first one has moved on to higher education with University of Toronto, and the second young lad is actually still with us. We hired him on after his placement ended, gave him a raise, and
What does he do for you?
He's primarily dishwasher and prep, but he's just so eager to learn, and he's just a wonderful kid to have on staff. And I don't look at him as being any different than any of the other staff that we have.
I'm guessing that makes you unusual because, again, my suspicion is that most employers don't want to take a chance on a homeless young person because they think they're not responsible.
It's tragically unfair because, as I said, this is the norm. I mean, you're not dealing with, generally you're dealing with people who are looking for a second chance. And I can only speak for myself, but I'm probably on my 3rd or 4th chance.
In February, we were told that quote, for the first time, the universe has spoken to us through gravitational waves. Up until now, we have been deaf. That's the quote.
Nice
what
quote.
were we deaf to before this?
We were deaf to something that's happening in this room all the time, to ripples in space. Every time I wave my arms, which I do a lot, I'm actually, according to Einstein from 1916, who told us that matter curves space. If matter moves around, it produces a disturbance in space that propagates out at the speed of light. And there are gravitational waves, as they're called, going through this room all the time, which means the distance across this side of the room is getting smaller and larger all the time, and this time smaller and larger. We don't notice it, at least if we're sober, but that's because gravity's so weak and the oscillations are so very small, you would never have thought you could actually ever detect them. And what's amazing is an experiment was built called LIGO, which has 2 big devices in Washington State and in Louisiana, involving 2 big arms that are each 4 kilometers long. They're at right angles to each other. And when a gravitational wave comes by from a distant galaxy, and we'll talk about the waves that were produced, what they have to be able to measure, and it's amazing they can do this. So one arm gets a little shorter, the other one gets a little longer, and they have to measure a difference in length of a 4-kilometer arms, 2 of them, if they change by an amount equal to 1/1000th the size of a proton. In a I mean, you would never, science fiction writers would never imagine you could do that.
You can't do that with the naked eye, I gather.
You can't, in fact, I would have never thought it was possible, but after 40 years of trying, they finally were able to get to that level. And that means, if a truck hits a pothole 20 miles away, it creates a bigger signal. So that's why they have 2 detectors, one in Louisiana and one in Washington, so that they have to see the same thing. If a gravitational wave comes by, it takes about 10 milliseconds to go from one end of the United States to the other, so they look for the same signal. And even the quantum mechanical vibrations of the mirrors that they're doing, because in order to measure length, they send laser beams across either end and see how long it takes for the light wave to come back. Even the quantum mechanical vibrations in the mirrors are bigger than that. So it's amazing they could do that. But within an hour after turning on the apparatus, after it had been built and refined, they saw this beautiful signal, which in fact you could actually almost hear, because it's a vibration of 2 black holes orbiting each other and finally colliding 1.3 billion light years away from us. That means that the event happened 1.3 billion years ago, and lucky enough, they're lucky enough they turned on their detector just in time. And if you think about what they saw, you see, because gravitational waves are so weak, you have to look at cataclysmic events. And these were 2 objects, each 30 times the mass of the sun, colliding. And this is the other thing that I find amazing. They collided at about 0.2 of a second or so in the final burst of radiation. One was 36 times the mass of the sun. The other was 29 times the mass of the sun. Now, I'm not going to put you on the spot here, but I was going to ask if 36 plus 29.
29, 65.
You got it.
Okay.
Isn't it? It's amazing. You know, an American TV host wouldn't be able to do that. And so you think they form a black hole as mass 65 times the mass of the sun.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, it was 62 times the mass of the sun. Your math is not wrong. In that 10th of a second, it emitted 3 times the mass of the sun in gravitational waves, which is so weird to think about that. That means you turned the mass of 3 times the mass of the sun into energy. Our sun is burning about 10 billion hydrogen bombs every second. And over its 10 billion year lifetime, it'll convert maybe 1% of the mass of the sun to energy. Over 10 billion years. In 1/10 of a second or so, this converted 3 times the mass of the sun to energy. It produced more energy in gravitational waves than all the stars in the visible universe do in that 1/10 of a second in light.
That is mind-blowing.
It's mind-blowing. It's amazing. And what is neat about this is that it has opened a new window on the universe. As that quote you mentioned said, we were deaf. We were also blind. We now have a new window, gravitational waves, that allow us to probe the physics of black holes and in distant regions of the universe.
Well, that's
and
what I want to find more about.
Okay.
Now that we can hear and
Yeah.
now that we can see, what does that help us do that we couldn't do before?
Well, we can look at places we could never see before. We can look at the most cataclysmic events which cause space itself to curve up like a roiling sea, to understand the physics of black holes, but also the physics of galaxies, because there's a big black hole in the center of every galaxy. In the center of our galaxy, there's a 1 million solar mass black hole. In most galaxies, there are very large black holes, and it's kind of a chicken and egg question we don't know the answer to. Did the black holes form first and then the galaxies around them, or the other way around? And so we'll learn about that, but we'll also ultimately, as we improve our gravitational wave detectors, be able to look for other exotic events. And the more cataclysmic the event, the greater the gravitational wave signal. And the most cataclysmic event of all was the Big Bang. And we may eventually be able to detect gravitational waves from essentially almost the birth of our universe.
The beginning of time in some respects.
Exactly, which means we'll be able to have an empirical handle on the beginning of our universe and turn metaphysics into physics.
Do you
So
think that'll happen in your lifetime?
I'm not sure. I think in order to be able to do that, we'll probably, in this century, I expect we may be able to. And if all goes well, I might still be around. But you know, the neatest part of all of this is every time you open a new window on the universe, we're surprised.
Let's just start by bringing our audience up to date with what you two are all about, okay? Sheldon, if you would, let's roll the video.
In 2002, the hand-in-hand bilingual schools in Jerusalem and the Galilee were still in their beginning stage. Small and intimate places with only a kindergarten, first and second grade. A group of Arab and Jewish parents had started the school just a few years before. Together, with a committed staff, they were experimenting with the innovative idea of enabling an encounter of cultures in an atmosphere of coexistence and equality instead of conflict. The school program, where Arabic and Hebrew are taught simultaneously in bilingual classes, was a pioneering educational project.
נוי, לאן סירין הלכה עם 10 שקלים? לאן היא הלכה? לסופר נכון.
دفعت له 10 عشان انا بدي اشتري الملبس اللي حقه 3 شواقل. شو بصير لي انا؟
אתם רוצים לדעת כמה נשאר?
ممتازة.
Okay, so much we need to understand about how this all came together. Let's just, Rebecca, start with this. Are the teachers in the schools fluently bilingual?
Most of the teachers are. In general, Jews in Israel will know Hebrew, and Arabs will know both Hebrew and Arabic as the minority. So we have a 2-teacher model to ensure that all the classes are bilingual, and you'll have, for all the younger grades, Hebrew-speaking and Arabic-speaking Jewish and Arab co-teacher model working together all the time in order to teach.
I get that, but I mean, the teacher that speaks Hebrew, does that teacher also speak Arabic? And the teacher that speaks Arabic, can that teacher also speak Hebrew?
So the Hebrew-speaking teacher will often be learning Arabic, and the Arabic-speaking teacher will often be also fluent in Hebrew.
Okay. And Mohammed, are the classes 50-50 in terms of the student composition?
Yeah, mostly we're 50-50. That's something that we care of, to have an equal numbers in the classrooms and in the whole school in general. That's why also we have a Hebrew teacher and an Arabic teacher. So we try also to create something equal for both sides.
Okay, and Rebecca, when the student is called on by a teacher to answer a question, how does the student know what language to answer in?
We don't compel the kids to speak in one language or the other, so they can speak in the language of their choice. And so that allows people to be expressing themselves, because it's not just about language, it's also about culture and other aspects of communication.
Mohammed, do you know any other schools in the world where this kind of thing is happening?
Well, we know that in different places in the world, like in Canada, for example, there are bilingualism in a way that students are taught to speak two languages.
But English and French have not been at each other's throats in this country for 250 years, so that's a big difference.
That's right. And that's why we also give other meanings for the issue of language. It's not only language in a way that you've been taught to speak, it's also culture, it's also identity, and also other things that come with. And that's why in hand, the model is based on also issues of quality, how things can come equal in terms of language, learning both languages, but also culture and religious issues.
Okay, let me follow up on the academics here. Rebecca, is there anything especially extra complicated about trying to teach, for example, math or science in two different languages simultaneously?
So those will often be done, maybe you'll have one teacher teaching in one language or one teacher in the other. Or let's say with math, where it's important that kids are going to be getting in their mother tongue, because people tend to go to their root language for math. So maybe the teacher will be working then in both languages. On the one hand, it's complicated. On the other hand, it's like anything. Once you get used to the technique and the methodology, then people flow easily between the two languages.
Now, of course, there's a lot of education that happens in the classroom, and there may be even more that happens at recess time. So I want to ask you about recess.
Yeah.
My assumption is that the kids at recess go into their respective cultural units and speak their mother tongues. Is that what happens?
Kids are kids. So these are the kids who want to go play soccer. These are the kids who are going to go play on the jungle gym. These are the kids who are going to go play dolls together. And they're grouping much more around their common areas of interest, and that's what you're seeing more on the playground than otherwise.
Mohammed, can I get you on that? Do the Jewish kids only play with the Jewish kids and speak Hebrew, and then the Arabic kids with themselves and speaking Arabic?
Well, I would say that when they're with their own group, then they probably, and very natural that they speak their own language. But also, as Rebecca said, we're talking about kids. I think that the opportunities that they are separate, that when they're young, the situations of boys and girls. So you could see Arab and Jewish girls with Arab and Arab and Jewish boys, those playing soccer, others playing whatever. This is the more that we face and see. And not only necessarily the issue of Arabs and Jews. After all, it's us that we examine them in those categories. For them, they want to play, they want to enjoy, and that's what they do during the day.
Your book is about universities no longer being able to, deliver the goods when it comes to the promise of turning learning into earning. Where's the general evidence for that?
Boy, it's all over the place. In the United States, half of the people who get university degrees, which represents only half the people who start a university program, only half of them actually get jobs that require a degree. Underemployment in Canada for many years has been second, third, fourth in the world in terms of university graduates who are doing jobs that don't require a university degree. And there's two ways of looking at that. One of them is to say, the universities are not doing a very good job at training people for the workforce. And the other way of looking at it is to say the workforce isn't receptive to university graduates. They can't take as many as they're being produced. I think the number one problem is we have way too many people coming out of university with substandard qualifications. The degrees are fine, the universities are fine, but their abilities and their what they've actually absorbed in their time in university just doesn't match up with expectations.
You're saying even with half the people who go into university dropping out, we're still graduating too many university grads.
That's right. Those American numbers. We actually have about 30% of the people who come into Canadian universities don't complete their degrees. It varies widely. Some universities as high as 50%, and some places like Queen's and Waterloo down around 10, 11%.
But it's still too many.
Well, it is in the sense that when you look and say, why are people going to university? Overwhelmingly, they're going to university to get a job.
That's the first mistake.
Well, in a sense, of course it is. Universities are hard work. They require a lot of creativity, a lot of effort, a lot of commitment, right? And if you're going there because your mom and dad tell you to go there to get a job, and you even picked your program because you were told electrical engineering is actually better than getting an English degree, and it might be wrong, but you're going to the wrong things, you're not enjoying it. You're not there to absorb the knowledge and capitalize on the opportunities. Very, very frustrating for the students. Right? So we end up with real problems of commitment and real problems of dedication to their studies. And we graduate people, not all of them, some brilliant students come through our system. The new current crop of university graduates are as good, if not better, than they've ever been before. But the lower end, the bottom half of that cohort, the people aren't very well educated because they haven't necessarily put the effort in themselves.
Are the people who are really bright coming out of university really bright because they're really bright, or because the university has helped make them really bright?
Oh boy, that's a hurtful question. Because in fact, the research, particularly, again, Americans have way better research on this. And the research basically says that a big portion of your success at university and after university is determined by your family, your educational backgrounds of your parents, and your family income. We know those going in. If you want to pick the best cohort of students, pick their postal codes. Right. Find out where they come from. You'll know about the income of the families, their personal wealth, and you can pick the people who are likely to succeed. So somebody who goes to this university and goes to University of Toronto and gets a great degree in business, and they prosper, they become a millionaire. Well, maybe their parents were millionaires. Donald Trump's father was a millionaire.
So you're saying U of T can't take credit for that?
Well, they take credit for all of it.
They do, but they shouldn't.
They should be really careful about it, right?
Okay.
In the sense that they should be credited for the knowledge they put in, the opportunities they provide. I think universities are fantastic for the opportunities they give. And it's mixed as to about the outcome. In a technical field like engineering, you can't just pick that up off the corner. You can't just read a newspaper and be excellent at that. But there are lots and lots of people who are really smart, really bright, don't go to university, have huge and wonderful careers without the benefit of those 4 years or 5 years or 6 years, depending how long they go.
Let me toss a bunch of numbers at you here, and then I'll get you to react to this. This is from the Council of Ontario Universities, which of course is the body that represents all of the publicly funded universities in Ontario. I think there's 20 of them. They released the results of the Ontario Graduate Survey. Now, this is admittedly 4-year-old information here, but 6 months after graduation, the class of 2012 had an average income 7% below that of the class of 2005, so 7 years earlier. 2 years after graduation, incomes dropped to 14% below the class that graduated 7 years earlier. It's going in the wrong direction, in other words. Why is that happening?
Well, it really is going in the wrong direction, and that's incorrect to blame the universities for that, because the universities are doing what their parents want, doing what government wants, and doing what the students want. But the economy has shifted very, very dramatically. We've lost a huge number of middle-class jobs. I remember seeing a story, a very small story in the newspaper. One of the banks had laid off 1,500 people. Over the course of a summer. They do this in the summertime when the announcement comes out. Nobody notices it. And they have another thing talking about improving customer performance, which is about going online. So they're getting more people are happy with their banking experience, with a better website that they can use, and 1,500 people no longer have a job. If you lay 1,500 people off at a tomato factory in Leamington, it's national news. Yeah. And for days and days and days, 1,500 middle-class, well-paid sort of professionals, many of whom have university degrees and college diplomas, they get laid off. And it's just a blump in the storyline. And I think we've lost a lot of those jobs. If you look at the way government has downsized, if you look at the way that big corporations are operating, taking out middle management positions.
But you're talking about a changing labor market as opposed to anything universities are doing wrong, right?
Oh, absolutely. So, but here's where these things get complicated. And when I was the Dean of Arts at the University of Waterloo, which is one of the great universities in North America. I just adored my time there. 15% of the graduates from the College of Art, Faculty of Arts, went immediately to community colleges after they graduated. So they went and got a respiratory technologist diploma. So a couple of years down the line, they're making $70,000 a year. They got a Bachelor of Arts in History, which is my discipline, respiratory technology diploma. They're getting a job in respiratory technology. They show up on the scales as a success for the university.
And that is the Agenda's Week in Review. You can see all of those programs in their entirety at tvo.org, on our iTunes channel, and on the YouTube channel at youtube.com/theagenda.
Help TVO create a better world through the power of learning. Visit tvo.org and make a tax-deductible donation today.